Hi, and welcome to Education Roundtable. I'm Larry Petricaro, and my co-host tonight is Joanna Wright, and we have with us three students from Columbia High School. Justice Williams, who's been with us before, Mtume Findley, who has not been with us before, and Mia Goldstein, who's been with us before. And we want to talk a little bit about Columbia High School and Maplewood South Orange, and what this, what these communities and what the high school means, what kind of problems it has, what are some of the issues that we may have to deal with and may have to come up with solutions for. But first, we'd like to get a little idea about the general tenor of the school. So, Joanna, let me turn it over to you.
Yeah, welcome. I'm so excited to be here with you guys this evening. I would like to know your insight as to what is happening in the school district as high school students.
With the with all the fights and the uproar of violence. As a student, as a Columbian student, it seems somewhat chaotic. Like everything's unraveling. For me, it doesn't seem. I'm not very surprised by how quickly everything's unraveling. I'm kind of like, this was bound to happen. Watching the year progress, my own experiences here in the district, I'm not surprised, but I'm worried just a little bit. Not necessarily for my safety as a student here, but for when I leave here, because I'm a senior. When I leave here, how other students like me or other students who are also frustrated, how they will be handled, if the district will respond with an iron fist, or will they acknowledge that there are kids here that are people that need help. Like, this is a cry for help. This violence and this chaos is not necessarily like a need for them to break down and get hard with the kids, with the students.
Personally, I feel as though everything has been a domino effect. Not just this past school year, but over the years. Talking to graduates of Columbia and people that go here now, people that know what has happened in the years that have passed. It's been like a domino effect of violence leading up to now. So, and the basic, like the chaos and the anarchy that's happening now is a result of what started around probably about 10 years ago. It's when it all started to go downhill, and it's like a domino effect, because now there's so much like hatred in our community, basically, not just from student to student or from black to white, but from student to teacher, even teacher to teacher, teacher to student, administration. There's just so much pointing of fingers. Like, everyone is pointing at each other, and no one wants to take responsibility for what they should. Maybe I'm the problem, or maybe I should take responsibility for the actions that I've committed, or the things that I've done, and that's basically everything that's been happening now.
I can't speak with full authority on the details of everything, because I'm still a bit unclear. Like, I wasn't involved in any of them. But I think we have to be careful with the way we address them, because, a lot of people are filming these fights and just enjoying them and just consuming them. And essentially, this is the worst day of that person's life. And, with technology and everything is permanent, and everyone's vining it and watching it again and again and again. And this is how these students are viewed, and it's viewed as a group, and these students who are predominantly black fighting are being perceived this way by essentially everybody, but also the white community in the school. And we have to be careful to make sure that these students aren't perceived as only these vicious fighters and as something more than that. Because when you're involved in something as awful as a fight that's so public,
Right.
that's really a terrible day for you. You're gonna go home feeling not great, and we should just be careful with how we address it and look at it. And
because that's a national trend. This idea of black people fighting, like what was it, World Star, which is
The
just
what?
World Star.
WorldStarHipHop.com.
Yeah,
It's
like this
I call it the
online.
downfall of African American society. It will be the downfall.
Because it's just it's filming situations where black people are violent, or there's conflict, and it becomes the source of entertainment. So it's a national trend that's happening. So then, of course, as consumers of trends that are happening nationally, we begin to do it and we fall into it. So now we're showing pictures and we're showing videos and creating montages and songs to something that has ended or that has messed up someone's academic. It's just horrible. The idea of it being on your record that you've been suspended is not something to take lightly at all. And the fact that we find humor in that is ridiculous.
Well, what's the cause of these fights, or is there a cause?
I feel as though the cause is, I wouldn't say ignorance. Well, it possibly could be ignorance, because ignorance is a lack of knowledge, and I feel as though these people, the victims and the ones that are basically the aggressors are ignorant towards, they lack the knowledge of wanting to actually be better, and they lack the knowledge of how to be better. But it's halfway, it's like a 50-50 type of thing. It's like it's their fault because they don't want to be better, but at the same time it's not their fault. It's because that's how they were raised, and 90% of the time these people are African Americans, and this is a reoccurring thing in the African American community, whereas though the generations before ours failed to uplift their offspring, whereas though they want them to be better, and they just left it so that they're equal. Like they don't want their children to be better in a way, whereas though I want my son, you don't exactly want your son or your daughter to go to college and succeed and everything, but you should at least want them to have knowledge of holding yourself in a respectful manner, respecting yourself and respecting those around you. But there's just a lack of respect for ourselves and a lack of respect for our brothers and sisters, basically. And it goes back to the whole thing about hatred in our communities. There's a bunch of hatred, ignorance, there's chaos, basically. And it starts from a generational type of thing. It's like it's passed down, basically.
They're not. I agree that they're not empowered. I think certain students who lack of immaturity and understanding how fighting and how getting in trouble can impact you in the long run. That suspension is not something to take lightly. It's not just that you got kicked out of school for a week or a couple of days and you come back. There are some people who are told you can't have a suspension. You're competing with people all over to get into college, and colleges will look at you this way. And especially as someone who's black and someone who's young, where education is the key, where going to a good college is the key, where a white kid where someone who isn't black could possibly say, oh, I want to take a gap year, I'm not sure I'm ready for college yet. In a black home where you're being empowered and they're letting you know this is who you are and this is how the world sees you and this is your ticket out, this is your only way that you can empower yourself and gain access to things that you don't naturally have because of the color of your skin, where they're not told that you can't afford to make these mistakes, you can't afford to be suspended, and their parents when their parents are not enforcing that with them at home, then they don't understand that, or they don't understand how irresponsible it is for them to do these things. So they lash out and they do those things. Where a regular student, if we don't look at their race, we're kids, so we mess around and we're irresponsible. But there's always, if it's not at home, it's at school, where a teacher will take a special interest in that student and be like, listen, you can't do this. You have to understand that school is important. But school is way more important for a person of color than it will be for anyone, because that is literally your ticket. So if a student of color is here, and black youth already naturally, I think inherently, especially in America, have a problem with authority. We are very, very aggressive when it comes to authority, and we either shrink in and we're like terrified of them, or we get very aggressive and we hate them, and it's like a hate. And it's never really a good relationship with them. And that's not just with police officers, but that's with any authority figure. And when the authority figures around you don't look like you, and they can't understand that because you are black and they're not there to reinforce what your parents should be doing at home, that you can't afford to slip up because you are a person of color, when that's not happening, then you're lost. And you continue to make these mistakes. You continue to be irresponsible.
Well, what do you think is the reason for this aggressive attitude toward authorities? You see, it's either aggressive or withdrawn. It sounds like what you're saying.
I think it's a mutual disrespect and disregard.
Yeah, we have tons of reasons.
I feel like that's,
Well, okay, then that's fine. What are, I'd like to.
that's also generational. If you wanna go into it that way, I'm gonna answer the question as blatant as possible. The new age of, I guess you could say, are you asking the this hatred towards authority from an African American point of view,
Well, yeah, because
or
what
from
Justice was saying,
a youthful point of view?
no, Justice
Black
was
youth.
saying that
From
black youth
black youth?
particularly seem
I
to
feel as though
have
it comes from
choices.
the slavery era, whereas though it started from a slave master and a slave, or an overseer and a slave, and I'm positive that no one had respect for the slave master. It was like you feared them instead.
Exactly.
So when you back a cat into a corner, they have nowhere else to go, so they're gonna lash back out. So that fear then turns into anger. So that's when you lash out in an aggressive way. So being that there are no more slave masters, I feel as though the authority figures that are now police officers, that are now security guards, that are now administrators, they're being lashed out on because authority is no longer looked as someone that's on our side.
Now, if it were me, well, it is me, right? And I say to you, you know, slavery was like 200 years ago, or whatever it was. Like, I don't know exactly how many years ago. You know, isn't there at some point in time where maybe that you get past that?
No,
Okay,
Not anytime
that's
soon.
the way I
There's
look at it. Now, why would I be wrong?
because there's a new, even though this is a new age and a new era, we are also new slaves. Basically, we're slaves to modern day things now. We're slaves to like technology. We're slaves to fashion. We're slaves to different topics, different slang. Like there's a whole the whole theory of the Willie Lynch letter, which
The
I'm
which?
sure the Willie Lynch letter, which I'm sure
It's a
are you
theory of.
there was a it's a theory that there was a slave master whose name was Willie Lynch, and he wrote I guess you could say call it an essay basically on how to manipulate the mindset of a slave and generations after, whereas though you would start with taking away the male figure, and then you would mutilate the woman, and then you would then scare the child into becoming now your robot in a way, so that you could have the perfect slave, where as though they love you to the point where they will do anything for you.
Right.
And now I feel as though the new Willie Lynch letter is I know we would understand it because in a youth point of view, there's a thing where now in the black community there's a light skin versus dark skin type of thing. And Willie Lynch he mentioned in that letter that the whole
raping black women.
And also the light skinned slaves were in the house and the dark skinned slaves were in the field, and they ended up hating each other because the house slaves were then treated better, and they were on it was a hierarchy system, whereas though they were higher than the slaves that were on the field basically. And
If
that's
they hate each other, they can't come
then they
together
can't
to
come
realize
together.
who the common enemy is.
So
It's not
divide and
us.
conquer.
to then basically divide and conquer. Yes.
Well, if you guys can hold on for a minute, that we're going to have to take a break. So if you'll stay with us, we'll be back. This is Larry Petricaro and Joanna Wright with Education Roundtable. We'll be back in a minute.
Television is a powerful and influential medium that allows different groups the opportunity to produce programming that directly affects their own communities. Public, educational, and government access channels ensure that all people, regardless of race, age, gender, disability, religion, or economic status, have access to local government information and the use of a public communication forum. Make sure everyone has a voice. Support your local PEG channels.
Well, welcome back. We're here with Joanna Wright, with Justice Williams, and Toomey Findlay, and Mia Goldstein. And we've been talking about some of the issues that students in the school have to address, predominantly black students have to address. And so we're going to continue along that vein, but we will try to turn it to perhaps, Joanna, a little more of a solution-oriented approach. So.
Yes, if the next question is, if you were asked to identify challenges that you have here, in the school district and solutions, what would they be?
No connection. I don't have, since being in this district, since coming to Columbia High School, I've not once had a black teacher at all, a teacher that looked like me at all, ever. So I've become accustomed to having to change the way that I see things, or having to kind of know what not to say and what to say, because not only have I not had a black teacher, but I've been one of the few black students in my classes. And with that, I don't feel a connection to my school then. I don't feel like this is my school, I don't feel like this is my class, I don't feel like that's my teacher. And if I'm someone who's being bullied, if I'm someone who's feeling frustrated, if I'm someone who's if I feel like I'm emotionally distressed, and I don't think, and it's something that's happening at home, so that's not a safe haven for me. And then in school, where I am most of my day, I'm not really at home as much as I am in school. If I don't feel that with the students I'm around, and if I don't feel that with my guidance counselors who don't look like me, who I don't think will understand, or my teachers who don't look like me and who I don't think will understand, then there'll be this divide. And then when there becomes a crisis and there's a pressure, I take things into my own hands, which you cannot always think will be the most responsible way to handle things, because I am distressed. I think a solution then would have to be acknowledging that, yes, we are a diverse community, but we cannot continue to look at our black students and our black parents and business owners as tokens. Oh, we're diverse, everything's fine, this is great. We have a black person there, we have a black person there. We have to acknowledge that with diversity, with all the great things that come with diversity, comes the need to acknowledge that I am black and I'm proud to be black, but as a black person, this is what I go through. And by acknowledging that, and by acknowledging that I have a different experience than my white classmate, my white friend, and having someone here specifically for me to say, I understand what you're going through, and this is how I handled it, and this is how I think you should handle it, that will go miles. So I think just in terms of hiring people or creating programs specifically for African Americans, why are we so afraid in such a diverse community to have something that is specifically for students of color?
Well, what would that be? What would be an example of
I can answer that. I'm actually in the works of we're trying to start along with 3 other students a black student union for next year. We're actually trying to start that right now, but we don't know the exact route to take in which we could actually start it. We've got the okay from administration, but now we actually have to talk to the higher ups, which I have no idea who to talk to, or
He's a higher up.
or so I guess you would be
Start.
It's
so
nice to know
that
you're a higher
that would be a
up.
start.
I didn't know.
So that's another thing, and finding an advocate, which obviously has to be black, but there aren't many choices. So that would be one of the solutions.
I was going to say, I had, I've listened to this, and you all make some very good points, and it's clearly a situation which I can't experience the same way you do. But what other people like me might say is, 2 things, and I don't mean this to be negative. I mean it so that you can, make me understand better. One is when you talked, Justice, about tokenism, being a token. I couldn't help but wonder whether or not that's sort of tokenism is self-imposed as opposed to externally imposed. That's one thing. And I'm not saying I'm right. Don't get me wrong. And the other thing, if we talked about it before we did, before the show started, we talked about the concept of integration. Integration, diversity, and we had this conversation a long time ago with you when there were 3 of you here, was the distinction between diversity and multiculturalism. And multiculturalism to me, is something that is difficult to be a part of. I think diversity is something we should celebrate, and you mentioned celebration before, and I think that's true. But if we want to take it to a level of integration as opposed to keeping it at a level of segregation, then it's almost like a black student union almost sounds as if it's going in the wrong direction. And I'm not saying it is. So those are 2 things that me as a white person winds up wondering about. So maybe you guys can
You're
can help me.
empowered every day in ways you can't even understand as a white man. You never feel like you are incapable of doing something because of the color of your skin. Whenever you see a police officer, even if their sirens aren't on, if they're near you when you're in your car, you don't get this terror inside of you, knowing you've done nothing, you've absolutely done nothing wrong. You know you have done nothing wrong, but you feel a terror anyway because you know the color of your skin is wrong enough, that it's a crime enough in this country. In this country, as a Black American, there is a culture that we have, a culture that goes deeper than our parents come from the same country, or our parents are both foreigners, our parents are both Jamaican, or I'm both Jamaican, or we both go to Columbia. There's a culture that we all share in this country, especially in this district, especially in this neighborhood, as Black Americans. And until we acknowledge that it's a culture that needs to be acknowledged, that needs to be highlighted, that we understand exists, and to empower young Black kids, we are not empowered at all. We are not empowered. The month that we get out of the year with the assembly that people think is a joke, the continuing of bringing up the same historical figures over and over again as if there are no new, amazing, and brilliant Black people existing right alongside us. Meanwhile, as a white female, as a white male, you see them every day. You see them in your teachers. You see them in your principal. You see them in the police officers. You see them in who we deem as heroes, who we deem as beautiful, who we deem as intelligent. When a Black person does something and they get recognition for it, they have to work, and the accomplishment that they've done has to be 10 times that of a white person who's done it.
So is the whole, would it be fair to say that the reason for this approach, the cultural approach, the Black Student Union approach and so forth, would be to minimize that cultural distinction and cultural difference so that at some point in time, you as a Black man, you as a Black woman, would feel the same as Mia or me?
Yeah.
Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, so I can feel like when I'm in a history class with Mia, I shouldn't shrink and because I'm thinking everyone's looking at me because I'm the slave and everyone here, even though you're my friend, even though you're my teammate, you're a master. I'm supposed to be empowered because not only am I learning about slavery, but I'm learning about the leaders of slave rebellions. I'm learning about the brilliant scientists, the brilliant academics who've done amazing things that have contributed to this country, the country that I live in, the country that I'm supposed to be proud to say is mine. I shouldn't be shrinking in my seat because my only role in my country's history is that of a slave.
And another thing that we also want people to understand is, although we are pro-Black, that does not mean that we are anti-white.
At all.
That's a good
Just
point.
as though you yourself going to college, graduating, getting degrees, and accomplishing all the milestones and all the accolades that you have to offer does not mean that you are anti-Black. It's just that is just you living your life. Me, I'm proud to be who I am. I'm proud to be the color that I am. I'm proud that my hair is nappy. I'm proud. So that does not mean that I am angry at you or that I want you to feel any less about yourself. You are still my friend at the same time. I'm just uplifting myself and my community because right now we are in a drought. We're in an abyss right now, basically. And you talked about the Black Student Union being a possible problem. I've gotten this already. I've thought about all the possible feedback that I would get trying to start something like this. And one of the main things would be I've thought about people that are not of color coming to me saying, "So am I not allowed? Since it's a Black Student Union?" No, you're allowed, but you're not being focused on right now. Come to Diversity Rocks. In that case, if you want to be a part of it, come to Diversity Rocks. But right now, this is for Black students, and we're here to uplift anything that Black students have to offer, whether it be art, whether it be art could be considered anything. So art, period. So it could be anything. So right now we're just uplifting each other and ourselves.
So you're talking in terms of just supporting one another.
Support.
having
So it's a
some
support
type of
system, emotionally,
support
mentally,
system
physically, spiritually, whatever
that
whatever
you don't
you
have
need that
now.
you don't
that
have
we
right
don't
now.
have So we don't continue to cower as, oh, the only time that we can feel proud of who we are is when we're being called ratchet, or when we can offer
Calling
the new
what?
dance, ratchet, which is just another way for
It's
ghetto.
a lingo, yeah.
We shouldn't only be appreciated when we know the new rap song, the new dance, the new fad. That's not the only thing that Black people have to contribute to this country, and that is not at all the only thing that we've contributed to this
And
culture,
that
to this
also,
country.
It also ties into the idea of this new slave era. Although we are not actually on a field now, picking cotton, we are now slaves to
Right.
these ideas.
We're dribbling the ball and throwing it in the basket, but we're not owning the team.
That is the only time we are being focused on, is when we're playing for the team, but we're not the ones owning the team, basically.
It's all for white consumption too.
Exactly.
It's what?
Basically.
I'm sorry.
It's all
White
for white
consumption.
consumption.
The same way the same way I'm disgusted by World Star Hip Hop, where we're watching black people fight. World Star Hip Hop is getting all this money because of all these people watching it, and it's entertainment for people to be like, oh, look at these people, they're so ghetto, they're so ratchet, oh my god, they're crazy. I'm supposed to find humor in watching other people laugh about the black people getting arrested, a black person getting arrested and a white person getting arrested. Very different. A black person getting arrested is so damaging to them, extremely damaging to them in ways that a white person getting arrested is just not in this country. It's a stain that you cannot afford to have on you because the stain of your skin is bad enough.
Well, let me ask you, have you seen any, if not signs of progress, any signs of hope?
Definitely. I think I see it with my friends.
I was about to say a sign of hope could be
Oh, Mia.
us.
Oh, Mia, you're my hope.
I'm gonna cry just as long.
And with things like this.
Any signs of progress could be trying to start, even if it doesn't work out, trying to actually start something as a black student union, having black and white leaders in a Diversity Rocks type of club, possibly bringing back an MLK club, starting clubs for other black leaders besides MLK, Malcolm X, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, and Rosa Parks. Name other ones, Grenville T. Woods, people that no one knows about.
Yeah.
Instead of a Barack Obama club where those are just household names that are being thrown around. There are more.
So
So
much more.
those could be forms of progress. So I guess challenges could be being basically covered up in a way by the different forms of just aggression. I guess you could say in a way white supremacy. I guess you could say.
Because our white student union are the clubs in our school where there are no black kids in. Our student government.
Our
That is
student
totally
government.
our white student.
That is
union.
our white. You
Oh,
are
yeah.
empowered. That you are the leaders of the school. You get special awards at ceremonies. You are especially acknowledged at ceremonies that the entire school has to attend. So black students looking at that now, none of the people who are representing my class look like me. We are the majority in the school, and no one in our
subconsciously-
student government looks like us.
Subconsciously, it makes you
Well,
Well, we
feel
are
like you are less.
microcosm of the school. Of the
But let me ask this,
national.
if you're the majority of the school, which I understand is true, why wouldn't you get elected?
Because some of us don't even run.
It's not told to you.
Because
What?
it's not.
If you're in an AP class,
You're
you're
not
gonna be like,
encouraged
oh
to.
yes, we're gonna turn on the announcements, or we're going to see white faces telling you the news,
Right.
and then they'll say, oh, student government applications in this room, and then as a white person you think, oh, I could totally run. Let me run. I will
Right.
do that.
These-
As a black person, you may not feel that.
These opportunities aren't given to us, such as in the civil rights era when, although we had the right to vote, that stamp was still denied.
Right.
Every time you tried to cast your vote, it's denied. You're not given the opportunity to actually use the rights that you so-called have.
And
It's-
some
it's
of
And
it
not
even
is
as
given to
far as
us.
like
it's
student
national.
government, you have to bring your voter ID, like your student ID, to vote here.
Right. And
Like,
you're not encouraged. You're not
it's essentially
encouraged in saying you're
disenfranchisement
smart. You should
if you
be
don't have
Wow.
part of the government.
Well, we're almost out of time, but before we leave, I'd encourage you to run.
It's always
I mean, it does sound like there might be some opportunities, and maybe it's with the new administration in the high school, there might be some positive things you can do, or if there's no positive things you can do, maybe there's even a dialogue. But, there's certainly nothing that would tell me that you guys aren't capable of participating fully.
I don't even
Well,
want to be
I'm-
part of the student
you know-
government because it's not for me. And I think that's something that a lot of black students in our school are starting
It's
to
not
face.
welcoming.
It's not welcoming. They're
Well-
gonna look at me. They're gonna be like, "Oh, look, it's a black girl on TV." It's like, "Oh, yay!"
Or they'll say, why are you here? Or like, why are you in this class?
Yeah, why are you in this
Wow.
class? How'd you make it here?
Well, we're gonna have to end, and, I
To
hate
end
to
on
end
a
on
high
that
note.
note, but we've run out of time. So thank you
Thank
for joining
you.
us in Education Roundtable. Joanna, thank you.